Hi everyone! Welcome back to another episode of Reading Practice Series. I hope everyone is okay. In our previous episodes, if you remember, we talked about reading novels beyond the plot and about recognizing symbols without forcing meaning into every detail. Today, I would like to focus on something that completely changed the way I read literature. Not a theory, not a literary movement, not even a critical method. A question, or more precisely, how to ask better questions while reading. One of the biggest misconceptions about studying literature is that good readers always have the right answers. When I first started studying literature, I believed that too. I thought every novel had a hidden message. Every poem had one correct interpretation. Or every classroom discussion was about discovering what the author really meant. But over time, I realized that literature doesn't reward people who rush to find answers. It rewards people who stay curious. The students who improve the most are not necessarily the ones who know the most. They are usually the ones who ask the most interesting questions. Whenever I teach a literary text, I notice something. Students often begin by asking, what does this symbol mean? What is the main theme? What is the correct interpretation? Those are understandable questions, right? But I don't think they are always the most productive ones. Instead, I encourage students to slow down. Before asking what a text means, ask what the text is doing. Why does this scene appear here? Why is this character silent? Or why does the author repeat the same image? Why does the story begin this way instead of another? Why is this moment described in so much detail? Sometimes the smallest details become the most meaningful. Reading literature is a little like walking through a museum. If you run from one painting to the next, you will probably remember very little. But if you stop and look carefully to the painting and stay with one image for a while, you begin to notice things you completely missed before. The same is true for literature. One sentence can completely change your understanding of an entire novel. One repeated word can reveal a hidden pattern. One silence can speak louder than a long conversation. Another habit I have developed over the years is paying attention to the moments that make me uncomfortable as reader. Whenever I find myself thinking, that's strange, or why did the author do that? I know I have found something worth exploring. Confusion isn't the opposite of understanding. Very often, it's the beginning of understanding. I also think it's important not to be afraid of changing your interpretation. Sometimes we become attached to our first reading. We want it to be right, but literature isn't a multiple choice exam. As we learn more, our interpretations naturally become richer. I have reread novels years later and discovered ideas I had never noticed before. The book hadn't changed, I had. And perhaps that's one of the most beautiful things about reading. Good books grow with us. They become different because we become different. One practical exercise I would like to share today is something you can try with an literary text. As you are reading, don't underline only beautiful quotations. Write questions in the margins. Ask yourself, why here? Why now? Why this word? Why this character? What changes after this moment? You will be surprised how quickly your reading becomes more active. Instead of simply receiving information, you begin having a conversation with the text. And I think that's exactly what literature invites us to do. It invites us to think, to hesitate, to question, to imagine possibilities. Not every question needs an immediate answer, by the way. Some questions deserve to stay with us for days or even years. In fact, some of my favorite books are the ones that leave me with more questions than answers. Those are usually the books I remember the longest. So, if there is one idea I would like you to take away from today's episode, it's this. Don't worry about finding the perfect interpretation. Focus on becoming a more attentive reader. Read slowly, notice patterns, stay curious, and never underestimate the power of thoughtful question. Because reading doesn't begin when we find answers. It begins when we learn how to ask better questions. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Reading Practice. I would love to hear from you now. What is one question a book has left you thinking about long after you finished reading it? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye!